victory. That is what the preachers cry from the spires of their temples. And though we are beset on all sides, with each battle we drive back the mutant, the heretic, the alien. Taking the fight to the enemy. Sing of victory as the galaxy burns. Victory as the Imperium rots around us. Victory.
Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained. As voted for by everyone in the latest poll, over the next few weeks we're going to be diving into the expansive Warhammer 40k universe. In this massive video, I'm going to do my best to provide an introductory overview of the timeline for the Emperor of Mankind, exploring his origin, the Unification Wars and the birth of the Thunder Warriors, the Great Crusade, the construction of the Imperial Webway, the horror of the Horus Heresy, his role in the 41st millennia, and his transcendence to God Emperor. I'm planning on covering many more topics in the 40k universe over the next few months in more detail, but the purpose of this video is to provide insight and a brief overview of the Emperor of Mankind's influence on humanity's future. If there's a particular thing discussed here that you want me to explore further, or if there's another 40k topic altogether that you want to see, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. Our thoughts light the darkness that others may cross space. We are one with the Emperor, our souls are joined in his will. Praise the Emperor, who sacrificed his life as ours is death. Hail his name, the Master of Humanity. The revered Emperor of Mankind, venerated as the God Emperor, Master of Mankind, or simply the Emperor by his loyal followers and known as Revelation in his own terms, is an eternal perpetual and a formidable psyker, reigning over the Imperium of Man. While perceived by the forces of chaos as the false or corpse Emperor, the Imperial Ecclesiarchy and the Imperial Cult honor him as humanity's father, protector, and deity. To the Chaos Gods and the demons of the Warp, he is the Anathema, representing the ultimate force of cosmic order in the galaxy, and the staunchest adversary of chaos. His status as the most powerful human psyker ever is both historic and current. For over 10,000 standard years, he's been confined in a state of physical decay to the Golden Throne of Terror. His once vital form is now a crumbling shell, sustained only by the throne's cybernetic systems and his own formidable consciousness, which itself relies on the daily sacrifice of thousands. The Emperor willingly gave up his eternal life for the safeguarding and service of mankind at the conclusion of the Horus Heresy. To the innumerable trillions of humans across the vast Imperium, he is deified. His Imperium unites humanity, maintaining it as one of the most powerful and dominant intelligent species in the Milky Way, both in population and territorial control. Mankind, united under a single regime, continues to endure against a multitude of lethal threats, including alien forces, the Chaos, and internal adversaries like traitors, heretics, and mutants within the Imperium's own borders. The governance of the Imperium, conducted in the Emperor's stead by the High Lords of Terror and various Imperial organizations since the Horus Heresy's conclusion, has been marked by longevity, oppression, and necessary severity. This rule has led to a standstill in both technological advancement and cultural development, devolving into a regime characterized by tyranny, superstition, and a rigid, intolerant religious dogma, conditions that would have been abhorrent to the Emperor. Despite his current state of unresponsiveness to external stimuli, the Emperor remains central to the Imperium's survival. His physical presence on the Golden Throne, though not involved in the day-to-day affairs of the galactic human government, is crucial for the Imperium's sustenance. His formidable psychic presence in the Immaterium sustains and guides the Astronomicon, a psychic lighthouse essential for faster-than-light warp travel, which is indispensable for Imperial navigation, transportation, trade, and communication. However, the upkeep of the Astronomicon is not without cost. It necessitates the assistance of other psykers, whose life energies are gradually depleted by the Emperor to fuel the beacon. 1,000 psykers per day are sacrificed to preserve the Emperor's psychic might. The Emperor is believed to still impart guidance to his people through a psychically sensitive divination instrument known as the Emperor's Tarot. This tool enables chosen psychics to catch glimpses of future events and discern the Emperor's intentions. Additionally, it's claimed that he is perpetually engaged in combat with the Chaos Gods within the Warp, thwarting their attempts to further invade the material universe. His consciousness is required to be eternally vigilant across the vast expanse of the Imperium, a necessary caution to ensure the protection and survival of the human race and to extend his safeguarding to those who are devout. Paramount to all is the collective belief of humanity in the Emperor's godliness that stands as the foremost shield against chaos and the myriad of other horrific perils that infest the galaxy. The central tenet that the Emperor protects has been the cornerstone of the Imperial Creed for more than 10 millennia. As we go back in time to explore the history of the enigma that is the Emperor, we begin by covering two alternative histories. The first origin that is hotly disputed, and the currently recognized origin, which by large discredits the former, and accepts that the early history of the Emperor, especially before his efforts to unite Terra during the Unification Wars, remain shrouded in mystery. The Emperor represents the unified reincarnation of all shamans from Neolithic humanity's diverse cultures, who were the earliest human psykers. The powerful, warped entities, which would later evolve into the four great powers of chaos, were not yet fully developed when the Emperor came into existence in prehistoric times. His birthplace is believed to be in ancient central Anatolia, in what is now modern Turkey, around the 8th millennium BC, long before the Age of Terror. As humanity advanced, the Immaterium, also known as the Warp, began to resonate more tumultuously with the dark aspects of humanity's collective psyche. This growing disturbance resulted in the shamans losing their ability to reincarnate. Upon death, instead of being reborn, their souls were devoured by the Warp entities and demons. Facing the threat of extinction and the loss of their guiding psychic presence, which would leave humanity vulnerable to chaos's corruption, as later befell the Eldari, the shamans of Earth convened in a significant gathering to deliberate on a solution. Their decision led to a unique and drastic measure. They chose to merge their psychic energies into a singular soul within a single human body, an entity they termed the New Man. In a coordinated act, the shamans consumed poison and died simultaneously, releasing their souls into the Immaterium. This surge of psychic energy overwhelmed the demons seeking to consume it, creating a purifying, indestructible flame that coalesced into a singular soul from the many, thus giving birth to the Emperor. Approximately one standard year following the shaman's collective reincarnation, a child destined to become the Emperor was born to ordinary parents in a Neolithic Anatolian community of herders and farmers, alongside normal siblings. His immense psychic power, evident from birth, transformed his genetic makeup and physiology while in the womb, granting him immortality. This meant he no longer needed to reincarnate and was impervious to attacks by demonic beings from the Immaterium upon death. As he grew, his formidable psychic abilities began to surface. Over 38,000 Terran years, he roamed the Earth, silently observing and becoming part of human history. He mingled with the various human societies. Initially just a spectator of humanity's achievements and errors, he gradually started to intervene, dispensing his ancient knowledge to advance efficient governance, agriculture, animal breeding, technology, and peace. Originally, he exerted his influence subtly, assuming the role of an ordinary man and concealing his true identity. As centuries turned into millennia, the man who would be known as the Emperor observed human evolution. He traversed the globe, silently assisting, sometimes assuming the identity of a notable advisor or leader. In tumultuous periods, he took on roles such as a crusader, religious figure, or even a savior. Other times, he remained a behind-the-scenes force, serving as a counselor to rulers, a court sorcerer, and an innovative scientist. While many of his assumed identities were modest, others became significant figures in world history or religious lore. In critical moments, he was present, subtly guiding humanity along a precarious path to survival, visible only to him. Throughout the millennia, as humanity flourished and progressed, the warp became more tumultuous. The individual who would be known as the Emperor was cognizant of how human nature's extremes were fueling the emerging chaos powers. Despite his endeavors to foster peace and harmony on old Earth, innate human traits like martial valor, ambition, defiance, and the pursuit of personal gratification persisted and could not be completely eliminated. Not all of the new man's initiatives were fruitful. Attempts to implant wisdom sometimes backfired, leading to periods of persecution and warfare. The nascent Chaos Gods, aware of the new man, whom they termed Anathema, recognized his attempts to limit their influence and expansion. Even before reaching full consciousness in the Immaterium, these ruinous powers identified the man who would become the Emperor as their paramount adversary. Khorne, the first among the 4 major Chaos Gods to fully awaken, heralded his emergence with global wars and conflict. Following Khorne, Tzeentch awoke, bringing with him a maturity in nations and politics, laden with their inherent schemes and duplicities. Nurgle was the third to stir, unleashing plagues that swept across Old Earth's continents, claiming numerous souls for the Lord of Decay. By the end of the European Middle Ages on Terra, these 3 Chaos Gods had reached full consciousness. The 4th, Slaanesh, remained dormant, destined to be roused by the transgressions of another race, the Eldari. As the new man's psychic abilities evolved, he became increasingly aware of the grave perils that humanity would face in the expansive universe. And so, he committed himself to defending humanity and guiding it towards becoming the dominant species in the galaxy. During the final centuries of the Dark Age of technology, an increasing number of humans were born with mutant psychic genes, granting them the ability to harness the immense power of the Immaterium. This era witnessed the devastating impact of uncontrolled psykers, marking the beginning of the Age of Strife. Witnessing these events, the Emperor recognized the necessity of taking a more direct and overt role in human affairs. Following the birth of Slaanesh after the Eldari's fall in the 30th millennium, and the subsequent end of the warp storms that obstructed interstellar communication and travel from the Sol system, the Emperor decided that it was time to actively direct the course of human history once again. He saw this as imperative to prevent the extinction of the human race due to the calamities of Old Night. The aforementioned history, though, is now largely viewed as apocryphal. In reality, the true origins and early history of the Emperor, especially before his efforts to unite Terra during the Unification Wars, remain shrouded in mystery. What is clear, however, is his identity as an immortal with extraordinary psychic abilities. The earliest reference to the Emperor in Imperial records dates back to his initiative to unify Terra, marking the end of the Age of Strife in the late 29th millennium. His son Horus once remarked that the Emperor had lived in Anatolia in his own childhood during their initial encounter. It's established that the Emperor was born as an immortal perpetual and was ancient even prior to his ascension to the Golden Throne over 10,000 Terran years ago. The Emperor is recognized as the new man, a pioneer and the most formidable among the new mutant subspecies of human psykers. He symbolizes the collective reincarnation of extinct shamans, sorcerers, and wise men who guided primitive humanity in prehistoric times. As the Emperor matured, his powers began to surface and intensify. He gradually regained memories of his thousands of past lives, amalgamating their knowledge and experiences with his own. In his adolescence, the future Emperor experienced a defining tragedy when his father was murdered by his uncle. During the preparation of his father's body for an archaic funeral ritual, he had a clairvoyant vision revealing the details of the murder. Subsequently, the young Emperor confronted his uncle, and with a subtle exertion of his telekinetic psychic powers, stopped his heart, showing no signs of either grief or spite for the act. He later reflected that this incident was the point at which he understood the necessity for humanity to have laws, order, and the leadership of a sagacious ruler to achieve its utmost potential. Following his father's death, he departed his village and headed towards what he called the first city of humanity, likely a reference to one of the Sumerian city-states in ancient Mesopotamia. For many millennia before his emergence as the Emperor, he observed and subtly influenced the course of human history, assuming the identities of numerous historical figures. He recognized that the darker facets of human nature were nourishing the burgeoning Chaos Gods in the warp. In response, he endeavored to foster peace and harmony on Old Earth to limit the growth of the ruinous powers. Regardless of the specifics of his origins, the man who would be known as the Emperor emerged as the most potent psyker in human history. Before his ascension to power, he lived as an anonymous perpetual, belonging to a mutant strain of humanity endowed with near immortality due to their highly advanced and efficient cellular regeneration capabilities. The origin of the Perpetual's abilities, whether natural or externally induced, remains a mystery. During the era of humanity's earlier interstellar civilization, known as the Age of Technology, the Emperor was already present and was associated with other perpetuals like himself. Among these was Olivia Sarica, a notable figure. In this period, Sarica, along with several other perpetuals and the future Emperor, embarked on a journey to the night world of Molech on a one-way spacecraft. There, they discovered a portal to the realm of chaos, which the future Emperor bravely entered, gaining newfound powers and knowledge crucial for the eventual creation of the Primarchs. These superhuman beings were to be crafted through a blend of advanced genetic science and warp energies. Following this event, the Emperor left Sarica to guard the Molech Warp Gate, awaiting the day it would be secured by the forthcoming Imperium of Man. It was only at the conclusion of the Age of Strife that the Emperor stepped out of the shadows to actively shape humanity's destiny. He undertook the monumental task of uniting the fragmented factions of Earth during the Unification Wars, which commenced in the late 29th millennium and concluded in 712 M30, with his ascension to direct rule over old Earth. With a heavy heart, he accepted the loss of many innocents during his conquest, seeing it as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good of uniting humanity and shielding it from the tangible threats of the warp. In collaboration with the ancient Mechanicum government of Mars, the Emperor and the people of Terra formed a pivotal alliance through the Treaty of Mars. This treaty marked the formal establishment of the Imperium of Man in the late 30th millennium. Leveraging this partnership, the Emperor initiated the creation of the first Space Marines and a fleet of interstellar void ships poised to transport his armies across the galaxy. The primary goal was to launch the Great Crusade, aiming to unite all human-colonized planets from the Age of Technology before the Age of Strife under a single Imperium of Man. This crusade also intended to subjugate, eliminate, or exile all intelligent alien species within the Milky Way, asserting the galaxy as the rightful domain of humanity. Utilizing the knowledge he obtained through his pact with the Dark Gods on Molech, the Emperor, with the assistance of his biotechnical division scientists during the Unification Wars, crafted the 20 superhuman Primarchs. These Primarchs, whose gene seed later formed the basis for the Space Marines, were developed using the Emperor's own DNA. He envisioned them as his foremost military leaders, diplomats, and consuls for the Great Crusade. However, the Chaos Gods, intent on sabotaging the Emperor's monumental scheme, interfered before the Primarch's development was complete. While still in their gestation capsules within the subterranean genetic laboratories beneath the future Imperial Palace on Old Earth, the Primarchs were swept into the warp by the will of the Chaos Gods and dispersed across various human-occupied worlds in the galaxy. In this way, the influence of chaos had already marked the Primarchs even before their births. During the Great Crusade, all but 2 of the 20 Primarchs were rediscovered and reunited with their respective Space Marine legions, which had been formed from the genetic material they left behind. As the Emperor ventured through the cosmos, some humans sought to deify him, a notion he strongly rejected, declaring, "I am not a god. Rather than enslaving humanity, I want to free it from ignorance and superstition." Nonetheless, Lorca, the Primarch of the Wordbearers Legion, yearning for a divine future for humanity to revere, succumbed to the persistent temptations of the Chaos Gods. After leading his legion to their service, he dispatched his first chaplain, Erebus, to subtly corrupt the minds of other Primarchs and their legions. At the pinnacle of the Imperium's expansion in the early 31st millennium, Horus, the Primarch of the Lunar Wolves Legion, subsequently renamed the Sons of Horus, and the Emperor's most trusted son, was seduced by his own hubris, needs, and aspirations into aligning with chaos. His betrayal precipitated a colossal civil war for galactic dominance, known historically as the Horus Heresy. This conflict involved half of the Space Marine legions and numerous Imperial Army regiments. Although the Emperor ultimately triumphed over Horus during the traitor siege of Terra, he was grievously wounded, losing limbs and sustaining severe systemic damage. His existence, teetering between life and death, has since been maintained by the life support systems of the Golden Throne. Within his physical confinement, only his mind remains active, roaming the immaterium, ceaselessly endeavoring to safeguard and steer humanity toward a progressively elusive, brighter future. As mentioned earlier, the individual who would later be revered as the Emperor of Mankind first emerged in Imperial archives as a warlord among many, vying for supremacy on Terra during the later stages of the Age of Strife in the early 29th millennium. With the assistance of his close ally and collaborator, Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor embarked on a series of military offensives against various techno-barbarian warlords on the planet. It is these campaigns that would collectively come to be known as the Unification Wars. In these battles, the Emperor deployed numerous military units, including genetically enhanced warriors, who would later join the Imperial Army. Among the most formidable of these forces were the Proto-Astartes, known as the Thunder Warriors. The Thunder Warriors, though physically superior and more lethal in combat than the subsequently created Space Marines, were not without flaws. Developed from adult soldiers through accelerated genetic, bionic, and chemical augmentations, many struggled with the drastic changes. Issues like metabolic collapse leading to a sudden death were not rare, and as they aged, many Thunder Warriors became susceptible to mental instability and psychosis. Despite these challenges, the Thunder Warriors were instrumental in the Emperor's ultimate triumph over Terra's warlords. The success led him to conclude that his grand vision of reuniting humanity across the galaxy necessitated the creation of a more advanced and reliable core of genetically engineered military commanders and warriors. After the pivotal battle on Mount Ararat in the Kingdom of Aratu, which some accounts cite as the concluding conflict of the Unification Wars, Terra finally achieved unity. The victory, won through centuries of strife, bloodshed and sacrifice, brought the entire planet and its populace under the singular dominion of the Emperor. Yet to realize his vision of a united human empire spanning the galaxy, the Emperor recognized the necessity of making some challenging and potentially unethical choices. With the Thunder Warriors having served their purpose, the Emperor decreed their elimination. Their genetic flaws and increasing mental instability made them a liability in times of peace. Their removal was essential to pave the way for their successors, the Primarchs and the Space Marines. Indeed, the Emperor's concerns about his creations were not unfounded. Another account suggests that even before the Unification Wars concluded, the Thunder Warriors came to understand the curse of their shortened lifespans due to imperfect genetic enhancements, and, feeling betrayed, they rebelled against their creator. In response, a group of several hundred custodians, allegedly led by the legendary Constantin Valdor, along with thousands of prototype Astartes from the newly formed 1st Legion of Space Marines, defended the Emperor. They executed a ruthless purge of these obsolete and mutinous gene warriors. While a number of Thunder Warriors did manage to evade the purge, the majority who had survived the Unification Wars ultimately fell at the hands of their own comrades. Some of these Thunder Warriors, either alone or in small factions like the Datar, during the early stages of the Great Crusade Cerberus insurrection, managed to persist. They led largely inconspicuous and desolate lives amidst Terra's populace, stripped of their past glories and constantly in fear of being exposed. The Imperium, however, largely assumed all Thunder Warriors were deceased, and did not actively pursue them, focusing its resources on the ongoing Great Crusade. With that said, Imperial propaganda maintained that the Thunder Warriors had valiantly perished to the last during the Battle of Mount Ararat, with their most renowned warrior, Aric Taranis, symbolically raising the Emperor's banner in the moment of triumph. Nevertheless, the reality was somewhat different. Several Thunder Warriors, including Taranis, evaded what they termed the culling, and Taranis in particular was destined to play a further role in the future of the Emperor's dominion. With Terra unified, the Emperor commenced his grand strategy to protect and uplift humanity throughout the galaxy. This monumental mission aimed to reunite the scattered remnants of mankind under the banner of the newly established Imperium, an endeavor that would come to be celebrated as the Great Crusade.
We must not falter. We are his sword. We are his wrath. Faith is our armor. And for those who prove worthy, the Emperor sends forth his angels.
The Imperium, how mighty its aspect, how far-reaching its boundaries. As one world dies, 10 more are brought into the fold. Fear us, for we count the lives of planets, not men. Post-unity on Terra, the Emperor meticulously prepared for the Great Crusade. He established the Astropath Corps, a group of special astro-telepaths to ensure communication across his future interstellar realm via telepathy. Additionally, he engineered the Astronomicon, a potent psychic navigational beacon fueled by his own will and psychic strength. This beacon would facilitate easier and safer interstellar travel through the warp, covering distances previously unimaginable. Yet the cornerstone of his preparations was the creation of new legions of transhuman, genetically enhanced warriors. These legions were an advanced evolution of the gene troopers he'd commanded, designed to be vastly superior to the gene-enhanced troops of the Imperial Army used during the Unification Wars. The Emperor embarked on the Primarch project, creating 20 superhuman infants with genomes based on his own DNA. These Primarchs were destined to grow into formidable generals and statesmen for his armies, possessing such exceptional mental and physical prowess that no ordinary human could rival them. To elevate the Primarchs beyond the limits of genetic engineering, the Emperor also utilized the powers of the warp, knowledge he'd acquired at Molech. This infusion bestowed nearly divine levels of charisma and ability upon them, but also inadvertently rendered them vulnerable to corruption by warp entities. The ruinous powers, fearing the success of the Emperor's plan to unite and uplift humanity, intervened. They perceived the potential for the Emperor's success to greatly amplify the influence of order in the universe, thereby weakening their own power. This is why all beings of demon kind refer to the Emperor as the Anathema, representing the antithesis of chaos in the metaphysical realm. Various accounts exist detailing the incident, but the outcome remains consistent. The Primarchs in their gestation chambers were cast into the warp from beneath the Himalayan mountains in the Emperor's gene laboratories, despite the multiple psychic wards he had placed. Believed to be lost, this event marked a significant turning point. In response to this setback, the Emperor devised an alternative strategy. Utilizing genetic material derived from the Primarchs' genomes, he created a new class of warriors imbued with some of the Primarchs and his own superhuman traits. These warriors, successors to the genetically enhanced human soldiers of the Unification Wars era, were the Legions Astartes, the Space Marine legions of the first founding. Following their creation, the Emperor led these 20 Space Marine legions, initially comprised of Terran-born adolescent males on their initial missions. These operations aimed to provide them with practical experience in warfare and diplomacy, particularly through the reconquest of the Sol system. The Space Marines successfully expelled alien slavers from Saturn and Jupiter's moons, and, most crucially, secured peace and integration between Imperial Terra and the ruling Mechanicum of Mars. This significant military and political union was formalized in the 30th millennium with the Treaty of Mars, providing the Emperor with the technological resources and materials necessary to expand his crusade into the stars. Simultaneously, this alliance marked the formal establishment of the Imperium of Man, and laid the foundation for the imperial bureaucracy on Terra. It integrated the Mechanicum as a key component of the Nascent Adeptus Terra, the extensive administrative body of the Imperium, later to be known as the Priesthood of Earth. The termination of the warp storms, triggered by the emergence of the Chaos God Slaanesh and culminating with the fall of the Eldari, paved the way for the Emperor to launch the Great Crusade around 798 M30, commencing with the renowned First Pacification of Luna. The Emperor's forces, distributed among an expanding array of expeditionary fleets, embarked on a mission to reconnect with long-forgotten human colonies, overthrow alien tyrants, and annex extensive new territories for the burgeoning Imperium across the galaxy. A pivotal aspect of the Great Crusade was the Emperor's personal quest to find his scattered sons, the Primarchs. As the expeditionary fleets ventured further into uncharted reaches of space, the Primarchs were located, one after another, over many solar decades. Each was integrated with their biological progeny in the Space Marine legions, and their father, assuming leadership of the Astartes legions derived from their unique gene seed, and they played an instrumental role in the construction of their father's empire. Together, they secured the allegiance of thousands of worlds to the Imperium, enforcing imperial compliance and instilling the principles of the imperial truth. This ideology, rooted in materialism and atheism, championed reason, science, and technological advancement, while renouncing all forms of human irrationality and superstition, including religious belief. The Emperor's commitment to spreading the doctrines of the imperial truth was driven by his conviction that only by diminishing faith and other irrational human tendencies could he begin to weaken the influence of chaos in the warp. The Emperor himself proclaimed that humanity would not achieve its destiny as the dominant intelligent species in the Milky Way galaxy until the last stone from the last church was cast down onto the last priest. By the inception of the Great Crusade, he'd already cleansed ancient Terra of its age-old religions and superstitious beliefs. This included personally overseeing the demolition of Terra's final church, where he engaged its clergyman, Uriah Olither, in a profound exchange of ideas, wit, and doctrine. The Imperial Truth further posited that humanity, owing to its supposedly pure physical form, was the rightful ruler of the galaxy. This belief was bolstered by the failures of other intelligent alien races like the Eldari in sustaining galaxy-spanning civilizations. Now it was deemed humanity's turn to carve its legacy among the stars. Since almost all intelligent alien species encountered by humanity were either inherently hostile or potential future threats to human supremacy and exploitation of the galaxy, the general policy was to eradicate any Xenos species posing even the slightest risk to the Imperium. The Emperor held that the Imperial Truth must be disseminated to all human worlds, initially through peaceful means, but by war if necessary. He believed that absolute unity was imperative for humanity's survival and prosperity in the face of a universe fraught with hostility. He recognized that enforcing the Imperial Truth might necessitate the regrettable use of force against those resistant to its essential nature. Echoing his sentiments from the Unification Wars, he grieved the loss of innocent lives and the suppression of individual freedoms that occasionally resulted from the Great Crusade's fleets. Nevertheless, he deemed these sacrifices necessary to protect humanity and simultaneously diminish the pervasive, corruptive influence of the ruinous powers. While championing reason and science, the Imperial Truth strictly forbade one particular technological advancement, the creation of machines capable of true thought, known as artificial general intelligence. You see, the Emperor recalled the catastrophic war against the Men of Iron, sentient machines that played a pivotal role in the downfall of humanity's last united interstellar civilization during the Dark Age of technology. Keen to avoid repeating historical errors, he was determined not to see humanity succumb to such perils again. Therefore, when the Great Crusade's expeditionary fleets encountered advanced human civilizations in the depths of space that had developed artificial general intelligences, these societies were eradicated without exception, deemed threats to the safety and integrity of the emerging Imperium. The universe has many horrors yet to throw at us. This is not the end of our struggle. This is just the beginning of our crusade to save humanity. Be faithful, be strong, be vigilant. As the Great Crusade advanced, there grew an escalating concern regarding the use of psychic sorcery within the ranks of the Imperium. The Emperor, despite being the most formidable human psyker ever known, harbored deep reservations about the increasing prevalence of mutant psychogenes among the human population. He believed that most of humanity was not sufficiently evolved, either physically or spiritually, to safely harness the immense power of the warp, or to resist the corruptive lures and temptations of its malevolent inhabitants. Increasingly, the Imperial Army and the Space Marines discovered upon their arrival on various planets that the local populations were under the sway of enigmatic forces and unnatural mystics known as sorcerers. These individuals were typically adherents of chaos cults, wielding sorcerers' psychic powers bestowed upon them by demonic entities from the warp. Such powers bore a striking resemblance to those employed by the Thousand Sons Legion, led by Primarch Magnus the Red. The use of sorcery by the Thousand Sons had attracted severe criticism, particularly from Primarch Mortarion of the Death Guard Legion, who had first-hand experience with the perils of sorcery on his homeworld of Barbarus. Additionally, Leman Russ of the Space Wolves Legion disapproved, holding the view that any form of combat relying on deception, cunning, or anything other than direct physical engagement was inherently dishonorable. Vehemently opposed to the Thousand Sons' use of sorcery, Russ was a driving force behind the movement to outlaw psychic powers within the Imperium. His conviction stemmed from his experience in several Great Crusade campaigns, where his Space Wolves Legion had allied with the Thousand Sons. The growing rift over this issue began to threaten the very cohesion of the nascent Imperium, prompting the Emperor to summon an Imperial conclave to definitively address the matter. Both proponents and opponents of psychic powers converged on the world of Nicaea, each side resolute in presenting their arguments before the Emperor, who presided as the final arbiter. The conclave convened in an ancient amphitheater, accommodating tens of thousands, where the Emperor sat elevated above the assembly. The witch hunters, including the Sisters of Silence, represented one side of the debate. They catalogued the myriad of horrors wrought by sorcerers under the thrall of what would later be recognized during the Horus Heresy as chaos. Their testimony included accounts of deranged mutants stripped of their humanity, cults and individuals who twisted their psychic gifts for malevolent ends. The Assembly was also reminded of the catastrophic consequences wrought by uncontrolled and demon-possessed psykers in the early age of strife. Contrastingly, the other side of the debate was championed by the imposing figure of Primarch Magnus the Red. Despite his intimidating presence, Magnus spoke with compelling charisma unique to a Primarch. He argued that knowledge itself was never corrupt, and the pursuit of understanding was always justified, provided the seeker remained the master of their learning, not its pawn. Magnus the Red asserted with conviction that his Thousand Sons Astartes had thoroughly mastered the art of sorcery, claiming no realm of knowledge too complex for them to comprehend or harness in service of humanity. He urged the Emperor not to prohibit psychic abilities, but to promote further research in their use, so they might be more effectively utilized for the betterment of humanity and the Imperium. It was said that Magnus the Red's passionate and powerful speech at the council deepened the divide among the participants. Although the witch hunters had solid arguments to support their anti-psyker stance, they struggled to match the persuasiveness of his arguments. Tension was palpable when a contingent of Space Marine librarians approached the dais. Acknowledged by the Emperor with a nod, their arrival hushed the assembly. Among them were some of the most esteemed librarians from the Space Marine legions, forming a semicircle around the dais to symbolize their unified stance. It was a young librarian epistolary who articulated their collective viewpoint. He analogized a psyker to an athlete, a naturally talented individual whose abilities required careful cultivation. He argued that psykers were not inherently evil, rather, they were tools that could be wielded for good or ill. Sorcery, however, was a different matter. It entailed the knowledge of harnessing psychic powers that often involved seeking, sometimes even negotiating, with the malevolent entities of the warp. With these kind of dealings, it was impossible to ascertain who or what ultimately gained from such exchanges. The librarians put forward a proposition that all psykers should be rigorously educated under the Imperium's guidance, specifically to utilize their abilities in service to mankind. This education of psykers was suggested to be an immediate Imperial imperative. Additionally, they advocated for the absolute prohibition of sorcery, labeling it an unforgivable transgression against humanity and a grave form of heresy. The council also functioned as a trial for Magnus the Red, who faced accusations of practicing sorcery and introducing such practices to the Space Marine legions, particularly through his role in establishing the librarians. As evidence of his continued engagement with sorcery emerged, the Emperor struggled to restrain his anger while delivering judgment on the Primarch of the Thousand Sons. Years prior, the Emperor had entrusted Magnus alone with the deeper secrets of the warp, warning him of the inherent dangers and strictly instructing him to renounce occult practices. However, it now seemed that Magnus had defied his commands, engaging in the taboo realms of psychic sorcery. This father-son confrontation is detailed in the Grimoire Hereticus. The Emperor's verdict was harsh, fueled by his frustration with Magnus. He outright dismissed the librarian's suggestions for a compromise. Except for navigators and astropaths, who were essential for the Imperium's survival and were strictly trained, regulated, and sanctioned, the use of psykers within the Space Marine legions was henceforth forbidden. And so, the Emperor decreed that the Primarchs must immediately shut down the librarious divisions within their legions and cease nurturing the inherent psychic abilities of those Astartes. All existing Space Marine librarians were also ordered to refrain from using their powers and to rejoin the ranks as regular line warriors. The decision led to the establishment of a new role within the Space Marine legions, the Space Marine Chaplain. This position was created to reinforce the Imperial truth and ensure the unwavering commitment and loyalty of an Astartes legion to the Emperor's directives. Magnus was also once again directed by the Emperor to abandon all sorcerous practices in the pursuit of knowledge pertaining to magic. While Magnus was visibly resistant and deeply aggrieved by the outcomes, he ultimately acquiesced to the Emperor's will, though the influence of the ruinous powers would eventually steer Magnus the Red and his Thousand Sons towards a much grimmer destiny. The edicts remained the foundational Imperial policy regarding human psychic mutation for the subsequent 10,000 standard years. The prohibition against the use of librarians within the ranks of the Space Marines, and later the Astra Militarum, was the only aspect eventually overturned. This change was driven by the revelations of the Horus Heresy, which underscored to the Imperium's leadership the critical necessity of Astartes and other sanctioned psykers in countering the might of the Chaos Forces. Around 2 centuries into the Great Crusade, the Emperor made a pivotal decision to return to Terra. His purpose was to supervise a crucial endeavor, the secretive Webway project, which was integral to his grand vision for humanity. This project involved the utilization of a remarkable artifact from the Dark Age of technology, known as the Golden Throne, which had been unearthed beneath a vast, inhospitable desert in Asia. His ambitious plan was to harness the Golden Throne to access and modify the complex Eldari Webway. The goal was to transform it into a direct and instant transport network linking all the worlds of the Imperium. This human-modified section of the Webway was intended to mimic the extensive network of warp gates that once interconnected the ancient interstellar empires of the Old Ones and the Eldari. The Webway promised to revolutionize human progress, enabling unprecedented scientific and economic advancement. Crucially, it offered a more efficient and safer mode of travel, entirely circumventing the perilous chaos-infested regions of the warp, which posed constant threats of death or spiritual corruption to human faster-than-light space travel. The Emperor's ultimate aim with the Webway project was to entirely disconnect humanity from its dependence on the warp. This detachment would significantly diminish the ability of chaos to corrupt and destroy, and also reduce the psychic emanations feeding the Chaos Gods, thanks to the protective psychic wards lining each corridor of the Webway. The Emperor envisioned guiding humanity through the protective confines of the Webway, fostering its evolution into a fully psychic race. This step was expected to elevate human ascendancy on the galactic stage, surpassing even the achievements of the bygone Eldari Empire, and heralding an unprecedented golden age of human civilization. A human-controlled Webway would also serve to consolidate the Imperium, ensuring that humanity would never again be fragmented by the constraints of time and distance. However, the immense scale and complexity of this project demanded the Emperor's undivided focus and necessitated utmost secrecy. Disclosure of the project could provoke opposition from humanity's adversaries, jeopardizing its success. The Golden Throne, a relic of the Dark Age of technology, was central to this ambition. It facilitated human access to the Webway and was an intricately mechanized throne crafted from an enigmatic, psychically reactive, gold-complexed alloy. Positioned above a pair of massive golden alloy doors, it served as the gateway to the Webway, large enough to permit the passage of a Warhound-class Scout Titan. Originally situated in the subterranean reaches of the Imperial Palace, specifically where the Emperor's gene laboratory complex, known as the Imperial Dungeon, once stood, the Golden Throne became the project's focal point. In this area, hundreds of Mechanicum tech priests and servitors labored tirelessly. The Emperor, seated on the Golden Throne, employed his prodigious psychic abilities to maintain the Webway portal, enabling his workers to construct a new segment of the labyrinthine dimension. This extension was intended to connect Terra to the rest of the largely neglected transdimensional transport network. The Webway, constructed from a material designed to be resistant to psychic interference and thus impervious to incursions from warp entities, posed a unique challenge. You see, humanity lacked the technology to replicate this psychically resistant material. Consequently, the Emperor had to personally use the Golden Throne to shield the new human-constructed sections of the Webway from any warp intrusions. This task necessitated his continuous presence on the throne, and was the primary reason he had to relinquish direct leadership of the Great Crusade, delegating it to his Primarchs before returning to Terra to supervise the project. Following the monumental triumph of Imperial forces against the largest Orc-Warg the Imperium had faced during the Yulinar Crusade, the Emperor determined that his direct command of the Great Crusade's military operations was no longer imperative, and so he chose Horus, his most esteemed and capable son, to lead the crusade in his absence. Horus, the most distinguished among the Primarchs, was the first to be rediscovered by the Emperor on Thonia, a dying planet so proximate to Terra that warp drive travel was unnecessary for the journey. Because of this, Horus had the unique distinction of participating in the Great Crusade alongside his father for many solar decades. He was the most exalted and beloved of the Emperor's sons, enjoying unparalleled trust and affection. The pair shared a profound bond forged in the heat of battle during the early stages of the Great Crusade. Not only did the Emperor shield Horus during the Siege of Raylos, but Horus had reciprocated this protection during the Battle of Goro. In another notable encounter, the Battle of Gyros Thravian, the Emperor vanquished the formidable Orc war boss, Garkul Blackfang, who had withstood the might of 3 of his Primarchs. Given their shared history, mutual respect, and loyalty that developed between them, the Emperor deemed Horus the ideal candidate to assume leadership of the Great Crusade during his absence. Elevating Horus to the unprecedented rank of War Master, the Emperor expressed desire for his sons to demonstrate their capabilities as leaders. With this transition, the Emperor stepped away from direct involvement in military affairs. He established the Council of Terra, the precursor to the Senatorium Imperialis, introduced the Imperial Tithe, and expanded the civil governing and administrative structures of the Imperium, such as the Adeptus Administratum. Following these reforms, he secluded himself beneath the Imperial Palace to commence work on the Golden Throne and the Webway project. However, the Emperor's decision to retire to Terra without explaining his reasons, coupled with his move to transfer governance from the Primarchs on the War Council to the Terran nobility and bureaucrats, who were generally disliked by the Primarchs, planted seeds of discontent among them. Of course, further stirring unrest was the appointment of Horus as War Master, elevating him above his brothers and making him their superior. These undercurrents of ambition, pride, and jealousy created an environment ripe for exploitation by the Chaos Gods, ultimately leading to the corruption of many Primarchs and paving the way for the tragic events of the Horus Heresy.
I never wanted this. But you betrayed me. You stole power from the gods and lied to your sons. From the skies of Terra to the galactic rim. Let the seas boil, let the stars fall. I will see the galaxy freed once more. So let it be war. Mankind has only one chance to prosper. If you will not seize it, then I will. And if I cannot save it from your failure, Father, then let the galaxy burn.
The unfolding events towards the latter stages of the Great Crusade didn't sit well with several of the Emperor's subjects, particularly some of his Primarch sons. During this period, Horus, the most trusted of the Emperor's sons, fell prey to the allure of chaos. This descent into corruption was a slow process, meticulously orchestrated over decades by Primarch Lorgar and his Wordbearers Legion. The concept of the pilgrimage, a mythological journey enabling mortals to commune directly with gods, was a prevalent belief across many human-colonized worlds in the Milky Way galaxy, including Lorgar's homeworld of cultures. Indeed, such a realm did exist in the form of the Warp, where one could encounter the primordial truth of the universe and the presence of the powerful psychic beings known as the Chaos Gods. Driven by the notion of this pilgrimage of Lorgar to ascertain the reality of the gods revered in Colchis' old faith, Lorgar embarked on an expedition with the Wordbearers Legion's serrated Sun chapter. This journey, part of the 1,301st Expeditionary Fleet, took them to the outer limits of Imperial space. At this juncture, Lorgar hadn't yet succumbed to Chaos' corruption, but had grown disillusioned with the Emperor of Mankind, refusing to venerate him as a deity. The change in allegiance followed an incident 43 Terran years before the start of the Horus Heresy, where the Emperor and the Ultramarines publicly rebuked Lorgar and the entire Wordbearers Legion on the world of Kur. The Emperor, accompanied by his regent, Malcador the Sigillite, personally visited Kur after instructing the Ultramarines to raze the city of Monarchia. The destruction of Monarchia was a direct response to the city's worship of the Emperor as a deity, a practice propagated by the Wordbearers. This was in stark opposition to the atheistic tenets of the Imperial Truth, which the Emperor staunchly advocated. Upon his arrival, the Emperor expressed his displeasure to Lorgar for the Wordbearers' role in spreading the cult of Emperor worship across the worlds they integrated into the Imperium. Exerting his psychic might, the Emperor compelled the entire Legion to kneel involuntarily, then denounced them as the only Astartes Legion to have failed his vision during the Great Crusade. This public humiliation profoundly affected Lorgar. Guided by his first captain, Kor Phaeron, and first chaplain, Erebus, both already swayed by chaos, Lorgar resolved to embark on a pilgrimage. His aim was to ascertain the reality and worthiness of the gods revered in Colchis' ancient old faith, to which the Wordbearers might pledge their faith and allegiance. Lorgar challenged the Emperor's dismissal of humanity's innate inclination towards spirituality as mere superstition. He sought to uncover whether deities truly existed that merited mankind's reverence. Though Lorgar's affection and loyalty to the Emperor had waned, he and his 17 Legion resumed participation in the Great Crusade. However, their involvement was merely a facade, serving as a cover for their underlying quest to complete the pilgrimage. The Wordbearers' pilgrimage was closely monitored by 5 members of the Legio Custodes, assigned by the Emperor to ensure the Legion did not revert to previous errors. In their quest for information about the primordial truth and the realm where gods and mortals might converge, the Wordbearers, as part of the 1301st Expeditionary Fleet, eventually arrived at the Cadia system. This system neighbored the largest known warp storm in the universe, which would later be recognized by the Imperium as the Eye of Terror. The fleet's master of astropaths informed Lorgar of peculiar voices emanating from the warp near this immense rift. These voices, which also spoke directly to the Primarch, originated from the Chaos entities within the Immaterium. It was in the Cadia system that Lorgar's suspicions were confirmed. The myriad religions across the galaxy, bearing striking resemblances to the Colchissian Old Faith, were not mere coincidences, but manifestations of worship towards the universal truth of chaos. The decision was made for the 1301st Fleet to maintain orbit over Cadia and deploy elements to the planet, identified as 1301-12. The landing party consisted of Imperial Army, Wordbearers, Legio Custodes, and Legio Cybernetica forces. Led by Lorgar, they encountered numerous barbaric human tribes on the planet. These tribes, described as dressed in rags and wielding spears tipped by flint blades, displayed a notable lack of fear. Particularly striking were their purple eyes, mirroring the hue of the Eye of Terror itself. Despite Custodian Vendatha's objections and his request to eliminate the seemingly heretical natives, the Wordbearers proceeded to engage with them. It's here that a peculiar woman emerged, addressing Primarch Lorgar directly by his full name, Lorgar Aurelian, and extended a welcome to him on Cadia. This woman, Ingethel of Cadia, a Chaos Priestess, would eventually lead Lorgar down a path purportedly towards spiritual enlightenment. However, in reality, this path was the beginning of Lorgar's descent into heresy and allegiance to chaos. Ingethel would later conduct a ritual transforming herself into a demon prince, Ingethel the Ascended. Subsequently, she guided the fleet's scout vessel, Orpheo's Lament, into the Eye of Terror. Inside the Eye of Terror, the serrated Sun chapter of the Wordbearers Legion directly witnessed the aftermath of the ancient Eldari's empire's collapse through the desolate crone world scattered across the Eye's expanse. Ingethel then deceitfully explained the birth of the Chaos god Slaanesh to the Wordbearers. She claimed that the Eldari's downfall and the catastrophic event known as the Fall occurred because, at the pinnacle of their ascension, they were unable to embrace the primordial truth, which, in her narrative, meant worshipping chaos. According to Ingethel, the Eldari inadvertently birthed the god of pleasure, Slaanesh, but greeted its emergence not with joy, but with denial and dread. Slaanesh gained consciousness in the 29th millennium, only to find its would-be worshippers turning away in ignorance and terror. This collective grief and rejection gave rise to the tumultuous Great Eye, the Eye of Terror, a manifestation of the birth cries of the Eldari's new, spurned deity. In the remnants of the Eldari Empire, the Wordbearers were confronted with the reality of the primordial truth. Ingethel cautioned them that to avoid the fate of the Eldari, humanity must not repeat their errors, but should embrace the worship of chaos instead. The fragments of the Wordbearers' serrated Sun chapter eventually made their way back to Cadia. They shared with Lorgar their experiences and revelations from within the Eye of Terror, the true nexus where mortals and gods could interact. After his own journey into the Eye and his subsequent acceptance by the Chaos Gods as their chosen mortal champion, Lorgar commanded a cyclonic bombardment of Cadia. This obliteration eradicated the original Cadian population, ensuring that the secrets of the primordial truth, as imparted to him by the Chaos Gods, remained his alone. Nevertheless, due to its strategic significance, Cadia was later deemed valuable by the Imperium. In the 32nd millennium, Imperial colonists were dispatched to repopulate the world, becoming the progenitors of the Cadians known in later times. Intriguingly, possibly influenced by the Eye of Terror's closeness, this new Cadian population also developed the distinctive violet eyes characteristic of the planet's initial human settlers. It's safe to say that the revelation of Chaos's existence irrevocably transformed Lorgar and the Wordbearers. Exposed and gradually corrupted by the ruinous powers of Chaos, they became the first of the Legionnaire Astartes to devote themselves to the Chaos Gods, thus betraying the Emperor in their hearts. During the latter years of the Great Crusade, Lorgar and the Word-Bearers endeavored to enlighten humanity about what they perceived as the true spiritual essence of the cosmos. However, they eventually resorted to subterfuge and manipulation to convert 9 of the Primarchs to the Chaos cause, as commanded by their newfound gods. The most significant of these converts was the War Master Horus. The warp is a vital tool to us, a means of communication and transport. Without it, there would be no Imperium of Man, for there would be no quick bridges between the stars. We use it and we harness it, but we have no absolute control over it. It is a wild thing that tolerates our presence, but brooks no mastery. There is power in the warp, fundamental power, not good nor evil, but elemental and anathema to us. It is a tool we use at our own risk. As it became apparent that humanity would not willingly accept the teachings of Chaos without first being violently detached from the Emperor's misleading imperial truth, Lorgar actively contributed to setting the stage for the Horus heresy. He employed Erebus, his legion's first chaplain, as a key operative in the scheme. Erebus appropriated a Chaos-tainted weapon, the Kine Brak Anathame from the Interrex, a technologically advanced human civilization, during a brief interaction with the Lunar Wolves. Subsequently, when Horus and the Lunar Wolves landed on Davin's moon to suppress a revolt against Imperial rule, led by the planet's former governor, Eugen Temba, Erebus ensured that Temba, now a devotee of the Plague Lord Nurgle, possessed the Anathame. Davin's moon, a decaying swamp infested with undead abominations like plague zombies created from Temba's Imperial army garrison, posed significant challenges to Horus and his forces. In their confrontation on the bridge of Temba's downed Imperial warship, Horus succeeded in killing the corrupted Nurglite. However, he sustained a deep wound from the Anathame, which delivered a potent toxin crafted by Nurgle himself. The poison was so virulent that not even Horus's advanced Primarch immune system could counteract it. And so, in a desperate bid to save the War Master, the Lunar Wolves acquiesced to Erebus' suggestion to entrust Horus to the Davinite Lodge priests at the Temple of the Serpent Lodge, a chaos-worshipping temple on Davin, who claimed they could heal him. While undergoing his supposed healing, the War Master Horus' spirit was actually transported into the Immaterium, with Erebus acting as his guide. There, Horus was exposed to his own latent ambitions and jealousies, stemming from the Emperor's apparent abandonment. The ruinous powers manipulated these emotions and presented Horus with a deceptive vision. This vision erroneously portrayed the Emperor's return to Terra as a scheme to achieve divinity, forsake his sons, and betray the Imperial Truth's promise of liberating humanity from the binds of false gods and organized religion. Horus, now convinced by this distorted projection of a future that, in a twist of fate, would only materialize due to his own betrayal of the Emperor, perceived it as his duty to rescue the Imperium from such a destiny. In his misguided determination, he allied himself with the ruinous powers under the facade of Chaos Undivided, in exchange for rebelling against his Emperor. Successfully swaying half of the Space Marine legions to Chaos, Horus spearheaded their rebellion, thrusting the young Galactic Empire into a devastating civil war that endured for 7 standard years. The conflict commenced with the horrific betrayals at the Battle of Istvan III and Istvan V. This war, later known as the Horus Heresy, was unparalleled in its brutality in human history. It resulted in the deaths of billions as the traitor legions ravaged the empire they once helped build. The war reached its zenith during the Siege of Terra, where the traitor legions, along with other Chaos forces, made a futile assault on the core of the Imperial Palace. Faced with the formidable defense of the Inner Palace and the throne room of the Emperor, bolstered by the sacrifices of numerous loyalist Astartes and the triumph of Primarch Sanguinius over the bloodthirster greater demon Karbandar, Horus realized that time was against him. Loyalist reinforcements were en route to Terra, threatening to reinforce the Imperial defenses. In a bold move to precipitate a decisive final battle, Horus intentionally deactivated the void shields of his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, orbiting the Imperial throne world. During the entirety of the Horus Heresy, the Emperor had remained bound to the Golden Throne. The heresy's inception was marked by the Primarch Magnus the Red's breach of the Edicts of Nicaea. Defying the prohibition on sorcery, Magnus used his powers to penetrate the psychic defenses of the Imperial Palace, intending to deliver a warning of Horus's betrayal directly to the Emperor. But the Emperor, unwilling to accept the possibility of Horus's treachery, concluded that Magnus had been the one corrupted by Chaos due to his continued use of sorcery. With this, the Emperor dispatched Leman Russ and a Space Wolves Legion to bring Magnus to Terra to face judgment. Horus, however, manipulated the Emperor's orders, inciting Leman Russ's fury against Magnus, leading to a full-scale assault on Prospero, the home world of the Thousand Suns Legion. This cataclysmic event, known as the Fall of Prospero in 4M31, ultimately precipitated the downfall of the Thousand Suns and Magnus himself to the service of the Chaos god Tzeentch. You see, Magnus sought refuge with Tzeentch, driven by the desire to preserve his legion and the vast knowledge they had amassed over the centuries. Simultaneously, the sorcerous incursion of Magnus into the Imperial Palace's psychic wards had catastrophic consequences for the Webway project. This breach allowed a multitude of demons to penetrate the Emperor's diminished psychic shield, launching an onslaught on the thousands of Mechanicum workers laboring on the human segments of the Webway. The Legio Custodes and the Sisters of Silence were thrust into a fierce battle to prevent these demons from flooding through the portal created by the Golden Throne and into the Imperial Palace's dungeons. While the Imperial Defenders eventually repelled the demonic incursion, only the Emperor possessed the psychic might necessary to seal the portal and contain the demons within the human-constructed portion of the Webway. This emergency demanded the Emperor's full attention, leaving the task of managing Horus's insurrection to Malcador the Sigillite and Primarch Rogol Dorn of the Imperial Fist Legion. During this period, the Emperor engaged in telepathic communication with Kai Zulain, a low-ranked astropath who had received a precognitive vision of the heresy's grim end and the Emperor's dire fate at the hands of Horus. In their exchanges, the Emperor revealed his foreknowledge and acceptance of this fate as the cost of his failed aspirations for humanity. Subsequently, Corvus Corax, Primarch of the Raven Guard Legion, deeply distressed by the near obliteration of his legion at the drop site massacre on Istvan V, sought an audience with the Emperor at the Imperial Palace. Despite the intense effort required to maintain Terra's psychic defenses against the breach in the Webway, the Emperor momentarily diverted his focus to telepathically impart the knowledge of Astartes' creation into Corax's mind. In the aftermath of his audience with the Emperor, Corax commenced the reconstruction of the Raven Guard, using the newly acquired techniques for rapid Astartes development. Despite his efforts, the Alpha Legion's surreptitious actions ultimately tainted the endeavor. Consequently, the Raven Guard remained one of the so-called Shattered Legions for the duration of the heresy, playing a minimal role in its subsequent developments. 5 standard years into his vigil on the Golden Throne, safeguarding Terra from the repercussions of Magnus's breach in the Webway, the Emperor began showing signs of physical weariness. The psychic toll manifested in occasional nosebleeds, an image that even appeared in the telepathic visions sent to his Legio Custodes custodian tribune, Ra Endymion. With the emergence of the potent demon Drachnion in the warp, the Emperor realized the war within the Webway was approaching a critical juncture, and humanity's destiny was nearing a decisive moment. He instructed the Sisters of Silence to amass 1,000 Psykers from across the galaxy for a sacrificial ritual to the Golden Throne. This sacrifice would power the throne for a single solar day without the Emperor's direct involvement. Seizing this opportunity, the Emperor entered the Webway to aid the beleaguered Imperial forces. He valiantly repelled the demonic onslaught and faced Drachnion. In a decisive move, the Emperor trapped the demon within Ra Endymion's body and instructed his loyal custodian to flee deep into the Webway, thereby safeguarding humanity from the demon's corrupting influence. Following his confrontation with Drachnion, the Emperor was compelled to once again bind himself to the operation of the Golden Throne, effectively sealing the Terra Webway portal. He expressed to his followers his sorrow over the downfall of his grand project, lamenting that with the Webway project's failure, humanity's fate might mirror the Eldari's, eventual extinction at the hands of Chaos. Despite his prescient vision that foretold Horus's defeat at his own hands, the Emperor acknowledged the inevitability of another Chaos Lord rising to continue Horus's mission of destroying the Imperium. His custodian, Diocletian Koros, was taken aback when the Emperor conceded the potential doom of the Imperium of Man, uncertain whether it would transpire in a year or 10,000 years, and admitted for the first time that even he was at a loss on how to avert mankind's annihilation. As the Horus heresy approached its zenith with the traitor's assault on Terra, 7 years after Horus's initial push towards the throne world, the Emperor was constrained to the Golden Throne. Except for brief moments when Malcador the Sigillite, Terra's regent and the second most powerful human psycho, could substitute for him. When the Emperor became aware of Horus lowering the Vengeful Spirit's void shields during the siege of Terra's final stages, he interpreted this as an invitation to a decisive battle. Convinced that confronting Horus was essential to ending the conflict, the Emperor prepared to face his wayward son in a confrontation that would determine the future of the Imperium. Malcador the Sigillite was tasked by the Emperor to occupy the Golden Throne in his stead, safeguarding Terra from a potential demonic incursion via the Imperial Webway portal beneath the throne. Meanwhile, the Emperor assembled a strike team comprising of Astartes from the Imperial Fists and Blood Angel Space Marines. This group was to confront the Warmaster Horus directly on his own turf, aboard his chaos-corrupted flagship by employing teleporter technology. The assault force included Primarch Sanguinius, but upon their arrival, the chaos-influenced powers of Horus scattered the attackers to random locations within the massive warship. Sanguinius was the first to encounter Horus, engaging in a fierce duel that tragically culminated in his demise at his brother's hands. However, in this conflict, Sanguinius succeeded in creating a slight breach in Horus's Terminator armor. Eventually reaching the battle barge's bridge, the Emperor confronted Horus. Despite the Emperor's extraordinary psychic and physical capabilities, Horus had been transformed into a formidable entity, swollen with the collective strength of the four Chaos Gods, epitomizing the true champion of Chaos Undivided. In contrast, the Emperor stood as the galaxy's supreme symbol of order. Their battle was a poignant clash between father and son, and Horus grievously wounded the Emperor, severing one of his arms and causing extensive internal damage. The Emperor's hesitation, stemming from his residual love for Horus, restrained him from unleashing the full magnitude of his psychic powers to annihilate him. In the pivotal moment of their confrontation on the Vengeful Spirit's bridge, a lone Legio Custodes warrior who had journeyed with the Emperor managed to reach the battleground. Horus, wielding the immense powers of chaos sorcery, effortlessly flayed the custodian alive with a mere glance. This act of sheer brutality and indifference to human life was a turning point for the Emperor, who then fully recognized the depths of Horus's fall into the clutches of the ruinous powers, and the dire implications for humanity under his dominion. The custodian sacrifice provided the Emperor with the crucial moment he needed to execute his final move against Horus. Steeling himself, the Emperor concentrated the entirety of his psychic might and targeted the chink in the Warmaster's armor. This concentrated psychic assault instantly killed Horus, annihilating his soul to prevent any possibility of resurrection by the Chaos Gods. In the fleeting moments before the Emperor's devastating attack, the corruptive grip of chaos momentarily loosened on Horus, allowing the Emperor to perceive a glimmer of his son's former self. In those last seconds, Horus regained his sanity, filled with horror at the atrocities he had committed and gratitude for release from Chaos's hold. As his psyche disintegrated into the Immaterium, Horus experienced relief from his tormented state. The climactic showdown between the Emperor and Horus marked the crescendo of the Siege of Terra, unfurling dramatically aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Found grievously wounded and near death, the Emperor was discovered by Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fist Legion, who was part of the assault team. Dorn escorted the Emperor back to the Imperial Palace, where Malcador the Sigillite, having occupied the Golden Throne in the Emperor's absence, disintegrated into ash upon relinquishing his position. The immense strain of maintaining the closure of the portal while the Emperor confronted Horus had utterly depleted Malcador's body and mind. In his dying moments, the Emperor swiftly imparted instructions to Dorn for transforming the Golden Throne into a sophisticated life support system. This modification was intended to sustain the Emperor's remaining living cells in a state suspended between life and true death for over 10 millennia. He was soon interred within this modified version of the throne. The mechanisms of the throne were designed to not only maintain the Astronomican's beacon, but also to combat the Chaos God's influence in the warp. This required the daily sacrifice of psychic energies of 1,000 psykers to keep the Emperor's mind empowered and active. The measure was crucial to prevent demonic incursions on Terra and to continue the fight against Chaos's corruptive forces across the galaxy. With his vitality rapidly diminishing, the Emperor had just enough time to convey his final, succinct directives to Rogel Dorn. Following these instructions, the Emperor was placed in an eternal stasis, lasting for more than 10,000 standard years. Although his physical body continued to decay at an exceptionally slow rate, his mind remained conscious within the warp, engaged in an endless battle against the forces of chaos.
Company command! First platoon! We've lost the square! We can't hold it!
In the 32nd millennium, the imperial cult, which emerged as the state religion of the Imperium, would propagate the belief that the Emperor's internment within the Golden Throne was a necessary step for him to ascend from the physical realm and reclaim his rightful place in the Immaterium as humanity's true deity. This ascension was perceived as a self-sacrifice to save humanity from the betrayal of Horus. Since his ascension, the Emperor has remained within the Golden Throne, existing in a state neither fully alive nor completely dead. Originally envisioned as a hub for harnessing the Eldari webway for humanity's benefit, the throne now serves dual purposes as both a complex life support mechanism and a psychic amplifier. It extends the Emperor's consciousness into the warp and across the galaxy. The Golden Throne is situated in the Sanctum Imperialis, the central hall of the Imperial Palace, vigilantly protected by the companions of the Emperor, an elite segment of the Adeptus Custodes. His decaying corporeal form is sustained by the intricate, arcane machinery of the Golden Throne, meticulously maintained by a legion of tech priests from the Adeptus Mechanicus. His psychic essence, diffused throughout the galaxy via the warp, endeavors to oversee and protect as much of humanity as possible in his weakened state, perpetually warding off the malign influence of the ruinous powers. The Golden Throne is intricately linked to the Astronomicon, an immense psychic beacon essential for enabling faster-than-light travel in Imperial starships equipped with a warp drive. The Astronomicon generates a telepathic signal crucial for navigators, specialized mutant psychers to steer through warp space. While the signal of the Astronomicon originates from the Emperor's mind, its amplification and sustenance depends on a choir of 10,000 human psychers. These psychers, selected for their psychic strength and control, undergo a stringent selection process, including a soul-binding ritual to the Emperor. The process fortifies their minds against demonic possession. The life force of these psychers is gradually depleted over several months, with 1,000 dying daily, necessitating a constant influx of replacements. These replacements are transported to Terra aboard the Adeptus Astra Telepathicus Notorious Black Ships, an organization tasked with regulating humans with psychic abilities. Most of these psychers are conditioned to embrace their role as a noble sacrifice for the Imperium, given their potential danger to others and the belief that their death serves the highest purpose for the God Emperor. Those less willing are subdued, and their psychic energies harnessed for the throne's power collection mechanism. The Imperium's survival is deemed paramount, regardless of the daily human cost. It is commonly believed that the Emperor's existence within the Golden Throne is one of perpetual agony and torment, yet it is his profound commitment to humanity that prevents him from succumbing to death. In the event of the Emperor's demise, the Astronomicon would become inoperative, severing humanity's current means of safely navigating the warp. This scenario is somewhat contested by the fact that humanity managed interstellar travel before the Emperor's tenure on the Golden Throne during the Dark Age of technology. However, without the Astronomicon, the Imperium risks fragmentation and descent into civil strife. The Emperor's sustained existence, crucial for guidance and protection, coupled with the unwavering commitment of his subjects to prevent his death, underpins the belief in his divinity as propagated by the Imperial cult and embraced by billions across the galaxy. The Space Marine chapters, unlike the masses, do not uniformly acknowledge the Emperor's divinity. They remember, albeit faintly, his initial intent to liberate humanity from the binds of superstition and organized religion. Nonetheless, they revere him as the founder of the Imperium and history's most eminent human leader. In a recent unforeseen development, as the Imperium faced a formidable onslaught of chaos during Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade in 999 M41 and the subsequent fall of Cadia, which triggered the formation of the Great Rift, a significant event occurred. One of the Emperor's sons, Primarch Robert Guilliman, was resurrected. Awakened from stasis in the Temple of Correction on his homeworld of Macragge, his revival was facilitated by the technological prowess of Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Cor and the might of Iniad, the Eldari god of the dead. Following his reawakening, Guilliman made his way to the throne world. Upon entering the Imperial Palace, he was able to converse with his father, the Emperor, for the first time in 10,000 standard years, but the full contents of their discussion remained shrouded in mystery. Following this historic meeting, Guilliman assumed the mantle of leadership, taking on the role of Lord Commander of the Imperium, and effectively becoming the chief authority over the High Lords of Terra. In response to the looming threat of Noctis Aeterna, he initiated the Indomitus Crusade, driven predominantly by the recently developed Primaris Space Marines. This campaign was a critical effort to safeguard the future of the Emperor's empire in the face of growing darkness. However, a sense of urgency prevails. In 999 M41, the Adeptus Mechanicus conveyed a distressing revelation to the High Lords of Terra and the Adeptus Custodes. The advanced life support systems of the Golden Throne are failing. Moreover, the tech priests admit they lack the requisite knowledge to conduct repairs. In the absence of a solution or an unforeseen miracle, the Emperor's withered body is destined to perish, extinguishing his mind and spirit amidst the tumult of the warp. This event would leave humanity isolated in an unforgiving void, and in that darkness, the waiting predators of the galaxy will begin their feast.
For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. For in the grim, dark future, there is no peace amongst the stars, only the laughter of thirsting gods.
Do not fail your brothers. Though their bodies die, their spirit must return to the chapter. That is your charge.
In a poignant twist of fate, the Emperor of Mankind, who would strive to steer humanity away from religious faith and superstition, found himself being venerated as a living deity, even before the onset of the Horus Heresy. This shift in perception was significantly influenced by the Primarch Lorgar of the Wordbearers Legion, who had authored the Lectitio Divinitatis. The text presented a compelling argument for the divinity of the Emperor. It posited that no mere mortal could have achieved the unification of Terra's techno-barbarian tribes and nations, nor could an ordinary human being reunite much of the human-settled galaxy under one rule. Furthermore, the book argued that the Emperor's extraordinary psychic prowess, his profound scientific insight, which indicated a deep understanding of the universe's fundamental nature, and his boundless compassion and goodwill towards humanity, were attributes beyond the scope of a normal human. Lorgar's assertions gained traction, and even before the conclusion of the Great Crusade, various cults venerating the Emperor emerged, with the Lectitio Divinitatis serving as their holy scripture. Many of these groups even adopted the name of Lorgar's tome as the label for their faith. However, the deification of the Emperor was in direct violation of the imperial truth, which espoused a doctrine of atheism and rationalism. Emperor worship was considered a grave offense under this doctrine, the same transgression that led to Lorgar and his word-bearers' public denunciation on Kur, and their subsequent pivot towards chaos worship to fulfill their spiritual needs. While Lorgar eventually disowned the Lectitio Divinitatis in favor of the chaos-infused Book of Lorgar, millions of other individuals during the tumultuous Horus Heresy increasingly embraced the worship of the Emperor as a beacon of hope and resilience amidst the era's atrocities. The apparent efficacy of devout Emperor worship in shielding his followers from the warp's demonic forces only accelerated the spread of this emerging religion. Over time, the Emperor's worship expanded significantly. By the 32nd millennium, the initially fragmented cults of Emperor worshippers had coalesced into the Imperial Cult. This widespread religion, with its countless trillions of human adherents, was administered by the extensive interstellar clergy of the Ecclesiarchy, formerly known as the Adeptus Ministorum. This religious body was officially recognized by the High Lords of Terra as the state religion of the Imperium. The Emperor of Mankind transcended his role as a mere secular ruler to become the God Emperor, hailed as the singular divine entity of all humanity. His directives were interpreted and enforced by the High Lords of Terra of the Senatorum Imperialis. The Adeptus Arbites upheld his laws, the Adeptus Custodes safeguarded his body in the Imperial Palace, and the Adeptus Astartes were the defenders of the Imperium. The Inquisition, conceived by Malcador the Sigillite at the Emperor's behest during the Horus Heresy's inception, evolved into a formidable entity, safeguarding the Imperium against both external and internal threats. Contrary to the Emperor's initial objections to deification, The profound faith of trillions of humans has significantly fortified his mind and soul within the Immaterium. In this psychically responsive realm, reality is sculpted by the collective beliefs and subconscious desires of the galaxy's most numerous intelligent species. The Imperial Creed posits that the Emperor's confinement within the Golden Throne is not a defeat, but a spiritual ascension that enables him to guide and protect humanity more directly, unshackled by physical constraints. This belief has led to widespread adoption of the skull in Imperial iconography and architecture, symbolizing the Emperor's self-sacrifice for his people. Post-Horus Heresy, the Emperor has essentially become a deity within the Warp, his power rivaling that of any one of the 4 major Chaos Gods and potentially equaling their collective might. He stands as perhaps the most potent spiritual force for order in the Milky Way galaxy. Though his physical form is but a devastated husk, more akin to a corpse than a living man, the Golden Throne's ability to sustain even the faintest semblance of his vital functions allows the Emperor to preserve his influence within the Warp. Concurrently, despite a severely weakened state, the Emperor retains the ability to cryptically convey his intentions to select psykers via the mystical Emperor's Tarot. Additionally, he can impart dreams and visions directly to certain non-psychic individuals, provided their faith in him is strong enough to establish a connection. The Emperor also offers a range of psychic defenses against the forces of chaos and its demons, facilitated through the bond of faith. There is even speculation that he may exert influence over the physical universe in other unforeseen ways. A prominent example within the Imperium is the belief that the Warp Storm, known as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath, which emerged in the Ultima Segmentum during the 36 Millennium's Age of Apostasy, was a direct manifestation of the Emperor's fury. This phenomenon is widely attributed to his divine will, a reaction to the usurpation of the Imperium's governance by the tyrant High Lord Goj Vandir. The Emperor's formidable presence within the Warp is believed to be a crucial bulwark against the encroaching forces of chaos. Should the Emperor be absent from the Immaterium, it is feared that chaos would overrun the physical universe, potentially transforming the galaxy into a nightmarish realm akin to the Eye of Terror. Among the upper echelons of the Inquisition, only a select few were aware that within the Sanctum Imperialis, the throne room in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor wields the power to directly manipulate reality. This includes the extraordinary capability to alter the flow of time, potentially slowing or even halting its progression. However, the God Emperor exists in a state of profound torment. Isolated from more direct interactions with his followers, he is appalled by the evolution of his Imperium over the past 10,000 years. The Horus Heresy's deep scars and the relentless threats from chaos, xenos, mutants, and internal traitors have marred humanity's journey. The Age of Imperium, rather than ushering in the envisioned golden age of mankind, has resulted in a civilization marked by stability, but plagued with technological stagnation, intellectual decline, political oppression, and widespread exploitation. This era is further tainted by rampant xenophobia and often brutal religious intolerance, far from the Emperor's original aspirations for humanity's future. Throughout the 10,000 Terran years of the Imperium's dominion over humanity in his name, the very maladies the Emperor sought to eradicate have only multiplied. Despite this, the Emperor perseveres in his unceasing agony, aware that his demise would debilitate the Imperium and deprive humanity of the limited guidance it can still provide, as well as the crucial defense he offers against the forces of chaos. He effectively harbors the grave concern that without his presence, humanity may not endure. Thus, despite its many flaws and its state of decline, he permits the Imperium to persist. On rare occasions, the Emperor intervenes through his chosen emissaries, striving to enhance the human condition. He nurtures the faint spark of hope among mankind as the time of ending approaches, and the mechanisms of the Golden Throne deteriorate, akin to a faltering timepiece.
Soon their foulness will be but a memory. That is what the preachers say. Belief will not save us. Lies will not protect us. But it is our hope that will damn us.
Well, that's all for today, folks. I really appreciate each and every one of you that voted we jump into Warhammer 40k. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if there's anything else you'd like for me to cover in the near future, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Nihat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.